Hello everyone, welcome back to the fourth and final video in my series covering my A to Z reading challenge that I've been doing this year. I'm going to say this year. Hopefully when I'm posting this I am talking about 2025 because I'm hoping to finish this challenge by the end of the year. We'll see. So, I'm kind of trying to speak it into existence and actually finish this, reading project by the end of the year. And yeah, in this final part, we've got 6 books left, 20 books down. We'll be covering the letters U to Z throughout this video. And yeah, we can talk about one book straight off the bat, because I have read my choice for you. It arrived 3 days ago, I think, and I finished it earlier today. And that is, for you, we have Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. This is one of the BookTube people that I follow read this and talked about it, and she really, really enjoyed it. And I'd never read Fonda Lee before. I know I think it's called like it's like Jade War, Jade Legacy. There's like a trilogy that's called something like that I think Fonda Lee is like more so known for, and that's like her biggest successful work. But as it turns out, she also wrote a novella. I hadn't read any Fonda Lee before. This is my first kind of foray into her writing. But yeah, the YouTuber I follow who enjoyed this, very much recommended it. So it went on the list for you. And yeah, it's a kind of fantasy novella about a girl whose family is killed by a creature called a manticore when I think she's 13, and she then kind of goes on to become like a manticore hunter. There's like this group of people who fly creatures called rocks. You can see one there on the cover, like giant bird things, basically like giant griffin sort of creatures, who kind of hunt down manticores to kind of keep people safe. And she becomes one of them to try and find peace and get revenge and all that kind of jazz for her lost family. And it kind of follows her and her bond with her rock, her creature that she kind of ends up flying over several years. And yeah, it's only 150 pages. Like I said, it's a novella, very short and to the point, which is why it didn't take me that long to read. And I really, really enjoyed this. I like a good fantasy at the best of times, and with this challenge, I've read a lot of really long books, and I wanted to read a few different sorts of things with this challenge, which is why I read Exhalation to get some short stories in there, and I wanted to do a novella as well. And this was a great kind of change of pace to just read something quite short. It feels like a good bit of progress in the challenge that didn't take as much time. And I really enjoyed just kind of like a sort of bite-sized story. I read 2 novellas this week. One of them did not go very well, but this one really balanced it out because I really, really loved this. So yeah, as I said, a very basic kind of story, a basic setup, but it kind of needs to be when it's this short. I thought the pacing in this was excellent. Like I said, it covers so much time. Like it goes through like probably like 7 or 8 years, I think, if not more. But I still think it's paced really well, and it doesn't feel like it's skipped over anything important. And the moments that really matter, it still kind of slows down and takes that time, and it still has a lot of kind of character moments, and it's definitely more so, I think, description of things and thoughts, because it is told from the point of view of our main character. But yeah, the fact that there isn't like loads and loads of dialogue and it is more like prose, normally that's not my kind of thing, but I feel like for this it really did work. And I feel like how Fonda Lee used that to have time pass, but we also kind of stay in the thoughts of our main character. Yeah, I found that really well done. So yeah, breezy in terms of it was just a shorter novella anyway, but also breezy because I thought the pacing was some of the best that I've encountered. And I think, and with the other novella I read this week, I very much had the thought of this needed to be longer. You needed to spend more time fleshing this out because it just felt so unsatisfying. And, I wasn't getting much from the characters. But with this one, I really do feel like the pacing worked. I felt like we got the exact amount of a snippet of this world and these characters as we needed to. I think the story was fully explored as well as it needed to be in this short span of time. Were the characters like super full of depth and I found myself relating to them loads, and did any of them really stand out? Admittedly, no, but I feel like they still worked within what the novel wanted to, and the novella wanted to do, and what it wanted to be. It's very much about the bond between a human and an animal, and I think it does that very successfully. And there are the characters are decent overall. Again, I wouldn't say any are going to be on like a list of favourite characters I've read this year by any stretch, but you get enough of them to kind of get invested in them. There's sort of a romance in the background in this that I found myself invested in, and I think the central bond between the main character and her rock, I did find, I found some investment in that, and there's a few little moments of character building between them that I thought was quite endearing. So you root for them to succeed and you kind of worry about them, and I think the ending of this is quite emotional. I don't think it will land with everyone, and I did kind of feel myself thinking, I kind of wish it had sort of happened differently, or maybe the events of the ending happened in maybe a different order. But I think overall it still worked for me. I think it could have hit home a little bit harder, which is why I think I couldn't give it the full 5, because I as I was reading it, I felt like, okay, this is going to wreck me at the end, and it didn't quite get there, but it was still very emotional. And yeah, I think for me it gave me real like Final Fantasy vibes, and like the relationship between like a main character and like a chocobo or something, but better. I hate to hate on chocobos, for the Final Fantasy fans, don't come for me. But even like the world itself, I think the world building, was pretty basic and bare bones, but again, we're not spending much time in this world, but it tells you enough that you can kind of picture it. And I really did find myself being able to just picture what all these places looked like and what this world looked like and how it kind of ran. And I normally I struggle to do that a lot of the time. So the fact that Fonderly did manage to get that across, I thought was very impressive in such a short amount of time, and across years as well. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. I would highly recommend it if you're just looking for a quick read, if you're into fantasy. If you don't like seeing animals get hurt, I think that would be my one thing I would not recommend, because I will say there is a bit of that in this, and if that is something that you're very uncomfortable reading, definitely stay away from this. But otherwise, I would highly recommend. I thought this was great, and look at that cover art; it's beautiful. It's so good, and I'm glad the story inside matched, a really lovely cover. So yeah, really, really big fan of this. I think we'll have to check out more from Fonderly and read her other works. But I do know the trilogy she's like super revered for. Those books are chunky, and I think the last book in that series is like 700-800 pages, so that's a bit of a commitment that we'll see. But I did really enjoy her writing in this. I enjoyed her descriptions. I enjoyed the kind of moments of character she brought to a fairly simple tale overall. So I would like to read more from her, so that might be something for me to consider in the future. But Untethered Sky was really good. I'm very glad I checked it out, and definitely would recommend. Yeah, we're starting off strong with this last set of books for this challenge. A good 4.5 stars for sure. And I do feel like if I read it again, I might even push it up to a 5. That could potentially happen. So maybe I'll reread it again like a year or so. But yeah, nice to kind of have just a quick breezy read after, some pretty long books that I've kind of gotten through recently for the challenge. So yeah, big success for this one. And that will swiftly bring us on to my choice for V, which is Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. Again, another really beautiful cover. I really like how shiny it is, mainly. And yeah, this is another fantasy. I'll admit I didn't know it was a fantasy until I started reading it, even though it literally talks about magic and stuff on the cover. For some reason, I just thought it was a murder mystery on a ship. It is that, but it's a murder mystery on a ship in a fantasy setting, which I didn't know, and actually was very pleasantly surprised to kind of learn when I started reading it. I'm only one chapter in. I'm like on page 15 or something. So, you know, I don't know where it's going to go, and I will check in with this book again, probably at the halfway mark. But yeah, it's a fantasy murder mystery, if that's your cup of tea. Another unexpected sort of fantasy book in this challenge, but I'm not mad at it because it's like my favourite genre to read, so what are you going to do? And yeah, the main character is a guy called D, I think. Is it D? Well, his full name is like Ganymedes, so it's D for short. Again, I'm only one chapter in, so I don't have a real sense of any of the characters or settings just yet, and we haven't even gotten into like the murder mystery portion because I'm only one chapter in. But I will say D has made a very good first impression on me from the first chapter. Very funny, very witty. You know, I think the writing and the banter between the characters has been quite humorous so far. I think there's a very interesting kind of world being set up in that first chapter. The kind of the lore behind how this world works and like how the magic works. It's kind of a very much of a thing of like the people are kind of split into like 12 like clans, I guess, if you will. 12 districts even. But one person in like each section has magic and no one else does, and they like pass it on to their child basically. And there's already some drama with that setup. There's already some secrets to do with that setup that I'm excited to see explored before we've even gotten to a murder mystery on a ship, because they're not on the ship yet. The ship has been mentioned. I think we're going to get there pretty soon. But yeah, there's a really interesting setup with the world so far, and I am very much enjoying D as the main character. We haven't really gotten to know any of the other major players in this yet, so hopefully they'll make good first impressions as well. But yeah, I really gelled with that first chapter. I thought it was really good fun, and I am excited to see where this goes. It's a bit more of a light-hearted affair than I thought this was going to be, but again, there's time for that to change. But yeah, I am very intrigued to see where this goes and how the world is going to continue to be revealed to us slowly but surely. There was a bit of exposition dumpiness I felt to that first chapter, but it didn't feel as exposition-y as other stuff that I've read, so I've kind of given it a pass so far, but we'll see. It could end up annoying me, who knows, but I thought it was a very strong start. I very much enjoyed as well that you get not one map but two in this, so you get like an overall like world map, and you then get a map of the ship that's, I'm guessing, most of the book's going to take place on, so that's exciting. And then yeah, you kind of get the breakdown of all the different like houses or clans, if you will, that take place in the book. So if you're ever a bit lost about who's who, you can kind of refer back to the first few pages, which I think is a nice kind of thing. And yeah, I'm very, very excited to carry on with this. So I will try and check in with the halfway mark. I feel like I've gotten really bad at just not checking in at halfway points, but I will try with this one. Again, this is another chunky book. Yeah, it's like 470 pages, so it might take me a bit of a time to get through. We'll have to wait and see. But very strong first chapter. I'm excited to see what the mystery is, who dies, who did it, how this is all going to unfold. But I'm feeling positive about this right now. I think I mentioned when I first got this book, and I think I did it was in a haul video I did. The woman that I got it from, because I bought it from Waterstones, the woman who served me at the checkout said she loved this. And then the booktuber that I follow didn't like this, so I'm excited to see where I fall. But from the first chapter, I've really vibed with it and I'm gelling with it, so we'll see what happens. But I will check back in when I've made some significant progress. Okay, so it's been maybe a week or two since I last recorded, and I've once again failed to check in at the halfway mark because I have actually finished Voyage of the Damned by Francis White. I have so many conflicting emotions about this one. I think I would settle on 2.5 stars. I think I've given it the extra half star because it's a debut. But yeah, I don't know. It was off to a very strong start, and I was enjoying the main character and the setup and, you know, the world that we were inhabiting. But I feel like the more time we spent with some of the characters and the more time we spent in this world, the more I was like, I'm not sure this really holds together, and I'm not sure if I'm even liking the main character anymore because he's so like, he's just so, I don't know. I don't know if Francis White thinks the humour is funnier than it actually is, maybe. Or maybe it's just not for me. You know, I feel like there are definitely people who get a lot more out of this than I did in the end, ultimately. I am a bit bummed because I was really into it when I read the first couple of chapters. It's too long, mainly. I think it's advertised as like an adult book, and, you know, that's because they talk about, you know, sex and boners and they swear every now and again. But really, I think this should have just been like a YA book. And I know I'm not alone in that opinion from what I've read on the reviews after I finished it. Because the characters are supposed to be like in their 20s, early 30s, some of them. They read like they're 15 or 16 years old. There is like a 6-year-old character in this, and, you know, they are written appropriately to their age, I feel. Everyone else just feels like they're written like a teenager, so I wouldn't be surprised if this was written as YA originally, and then they just pushed it and made it like an adult book for whatever reason. I don't know. So I think as like a YA book, this would easily be like a 3.5, but I think the world building just kind of, it's just too vague, and I feel like, you know, it does talk about all these weird concepts like how magic works and everything, and I think there's some interesting stuff in there, but it comes across just so basic in its execution in the end, and I feel like it doesn't really matter. Like, you the difference between everyone that you can tell what part of the world they're from is their hair colour, and that feels a bit basic, and that feels a bit like a YA sort of thing, and that's basically it. And all the side characters, apart from basically the main character, I think are just so one note and flat and bland, which is a shame, especially because I think I'm supposed to care about more of them than I actually ended up doing. And yeah, there were just so many different things that I'm like, this could have meshed better in another kind of world or another genre maybe. It just didn't quite come together for me here, and I think there was just too much in this. I feel like there were too many ideas that just weren't explored, because like the book is split up into like chapters, and then it's like, you know, it's day, because they're on like an expedition, it's supposed to last like 12 days, and each day of this expedition is supposed to like relate to one of the regions of the world, if you will. So there's like the spider region of the world, or the fish region of the world, which are our main characters from, you know, like the crow part of the world. So every day was like supposed to be dedicated to, like, I guess, celebrating that part of the world, like following their customs and stuff like that. So every day it's like, let's try and find the start of the chapter again. It's like day 4 is like the Feast of the Tortoise, because it's, you know, the tortoise part of the world. But that never comes into play. The way they start the chapters, and it's like, you know, day 4, so-and-so, morning, evening, whatever. Splitting the chapters up like that and calling them that, and having like the Feast of the Tortoise and stuff like that, it didn't add anything. So it just felt a bit unnecessary. And I thought that, oh, maybe that's, you know, what's going to happen. This chapter's going to tie to, you know, the tortoise character. Like, maybe it's going to be about them and centric to them. We're going to be investigating them as part of this murder mystery. But there isn't any of that at all. She barely spend any time with most of the side characters in this. So just the way it was like split up like that, I thought was very bizarre and strange. And yeah, like the ship is said to be powered by magic, and like the king of the world, if you will, is like running it, and as long as he's alive, the ship's moving. But there's also like an engine room in there that they spend some time in for a while, and I'm just like, okay, interesting. So I feel like the world didn't kind of stack up in the end, and I think if like there's a lot of promise at the start, and then more and more cracks just showed the longer it went on. And you know, the book's like, it's 460 something pages, and I just think that was way too long. Ironically, I think it took us far too long to find out what was going on, and then once we found out like who did it and why, it then wraps up in like a chapter. I'm like, whoa, slow down! Like, this is the bit where we should be wrapping this up nicely now, and it just doesn't do that. So this really kind of dragged in the middle for me. We spent a good 150 pages, if not more, of Dee, the main character, not finding out anything new about this case. And there's like a romance in this, like a love story sort of deal, that falls completely flat for me. It's so unbelievable because it happens so quickly. And at the start of the novel, Dee is in love with someone else. He's in love with another person on the ship. Things happen. I don't want to say too much. Things happen, and then he kind of finds himself interested in this other person in like a matter of days. And I'm like, you've been in love with this character all your life, and now you've and he actually says like, oh, I'm in love with this person now. I'm like, you've had like 2 conversations. You hated each other at the start of this book, and you're telling me you've fallen in love in like 3 days? So that was completely unbelievable, but I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Then there's a twist near the end regarding the new love interest, and any kind of semblance of them trying to win me over with this pairing, because they had their sweet moments, don't get me wrong, any semblance of winning me over around on this is completely undone, and the character development that those 2 characters go through is kind of completely undone. And it feels like a twist that was just done to be like, ha, fooled you, rather than this is a compelling story. So, you know, the resolution to like the murder mystery and like who did it and all of that, I actually quite enjoyed the revelations. I do think it was so obvious who was involved, just because, you know, it's the classic thing of like, oh, it can't be this character, they clearly have no clue what's going on, you know, they're so innocent. But I think so often they try too hard to make a character look like that, and I'm like, well, it's clearly them, and it was. But there are there's more to it than that, which I enjoyed the twists of that. And, you know, there's a lot of setup and a lot of things that are kind of set up throughout the novel, and like different mysteries and stuff within the larger mystery. All of that I think is tied up quite nicely and does make sense to me. So I liked like the mystery and how that was resolved. I thought that was actually very nicely plotted and cleverly woven together. It just took way too long to get those answers, and it was far more interested in Dee and his romance rather than the murder mystery. And yet all the side characters were just so bland. I didn't care about anyone other than Dee, really. And a character called Grasshopper, who was like the 6-year-old, who is, you know, very wholesome and sweet. But yeah, I don't know. It was a bit all over the place in regards to the characterization and the world building. The actual murder mystery plot, I think, was very well put together and thought out. I liked that. Everything else I'm just very up and down on, and I do think the big twist at the end in regards to like the romance in this book completely took me out of it, and I was like, I've just wasted my time reading this then, haven't I? Like, this character development's just gone. So I think some people could respect the twist. I respected it for about 5 seconds, and I thought, oh, that's kind of a shame. It felt to me like, you know, at the end of Beauty and the Beast, where, you know, the Beast becomes human again, and Belle kisses the human Beast, and like, it's not the same though, is it? Because like, he's not the Beast. I don't know this man. I don't really know who this man is. It felt like that sort of thing to me, a bit unsatisfying. I'm sure it will satisfy others. It didn't really satisfy me. And yeah, I think the book's humour, it just tried way too hard for too long. and no one reacted believably to the murders that were happening on this. Everyone was just fine with there clearly being a murderer on board. Everyone was just fine with it. When people's friends were dying, they just like were fine with it the next day. They weren't, you know, they were just too focused on other things. And like, in regards to like the romance again, we have moments with D where he's having an interaction with another character, and like they'll like shout or do something, and he's like, oh wow, that made me so, I just got rock hard. Like, oh, they're really hot, I'm attracted to them. I'm like, you said you're head over heels with this guy, and like, you know, your friends have been dying, and now you're like, the very same day they died, you're like, oh wow, I'm really turned on right now. I'm like, what is this? So the writing wasn't for me, I think, for the most part. I do think it felt well, it's a debut, and I think the writing felt a bit like that to me at times. So I wasn't too big on the writing. And yeah, I just thought the characterization was a bit all over the place. I think the romance, which takes up a big chunk of the book, is a complete waste of time. And yeah, I was just kind of a bit let down with things. And like I said, there was just too many ideas, because there was like talk about like suicidal tendencies in here, and there was a lot of like political stuff trying to thrown in to like make social commentary and political commentary. And I feel like that just went against the world building, and I was like, this doesn't really hold together very well. It just feels like you want to have this character go through this certain thing but not actually explore it. You just want to say like, oh, my book has this topic in it and this topic in it, but you just like mention it in passing, and it never becomes relevant. You've never taken the time to actually delve into that aspect of the character and, you know, given it any weight whatsoever. So yeah, kind of let down by this one in the end. I'm sorry to the person in Waterstones who, you know, at the checkout when I got this, who said they loved it. I did not. You know, this was fine. But there are definitely better murder mysteries out there. I've read better murder mysteries in this challenge. So yeah, I'm a bit bummed, especially because the cover's just so nice. But I probably will be unholding this one, I expect. So yeah, this was a shame. It definitely had a lot of promise. I think, you know, with a few more books, I think Francis Wright will, you know, just get better and better. You know, this isn't like a personal attack or anything. I feel like this was a bit needed a bit more polishing, and needed to be YA, not an adult novel, because there's just no reason for that. And I think you could forgive a lot of the characterization and the world building if this was like a YA book. But sadly, it isn't, so we have to judge it as what it's been sold as. So yeah, 2.5 stars overall. You know, definitely one of the weaker books I've read for this challenge, unfortunately. I really, really wanted to like it more than I did, but what can you do? One of those things. So, you know, glad I read it, because I had been interested in it since I first saw it when it came out. But yeah, never mind, essentially. It was fine. It was fine. And so that brings us on to my choice for W, which is Wicked by Gregory Maguire. I think the full title is like Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, or something like that. Obviously this is like the movie tie-in cover for Wicked Part 1 last year. I've since seen they've re-released it again with Wicked for Good tie-in cover. And I normally don't like tie-in covers. I normally hate it, but I do make an exception for this because Wicked was fucking great. And I have a lot of love for the Wicked musical. I've been a fan of it for about 15 years. Ever since we did it at school, I played Bach. So I've always had, you know, I've had a lifelong, well, half my lifelong appreciation for the musical. And, you know, the movie last year was brilliant. I can't wait for Wicked for Good to come out next month as I'm recording this. And it felt like the right time to get to this, really, because the hype has really started for the second film. So it's definitely got me in the mood to read this. I do know, well, I certainly know now, I knew even going into it that, you know, it's very different from the musical. Obviously, this book inspired the musical, which inspired the films. So, yeah, this is like the true story of the Wicked Witch of the West. And I'm about halfway through it. I'm on page 216. So I've just finished. It's like split up into like segments. I think I've just finished the second section of it, and we've basically sort of gotten to like. I mean, the plot is so different. I can see what elements they've taken and like really diluted for Wicked. Like there is, Elphaba taking a stand against animal rights. There is Dr. Dillamond, there is Galinda, there is Fiyero. Although Fiyero is very different so far. Although he's only really just shown up. So all the recognisable characters are there. They are at university and everything like that. So there are a lot of similar things going on. Madame Morrible's in it and everything. Although Madame Morrible and Elphaba just never get along, which obviously isn't the case in Wicked. And, Bock and Elphaba actually have known each other since they were kids in this. So far, Fiyero feels very, very different. He's not, he's not the charismatic, charming Jonathan Bailey. That's to be sure. And we spent a lot of time in the first section of the book when Elphaba was just a baby. We actually spent a lot of time with her parents. And just their whole situation. So Elphaba isn't really a proper character in this, I think, until maybe, 100 or so pages in when it skips to the second section. But I quite liked that, and I thought that was an interesting thing. But I might as well do my halfway check-in now, since I am halfway through. And I am enjoying this. I do think if you are like a major fan of the musical and you pick this up thinking it's just going to be the musical story but in book form, you will be disappointed. I think you'll be quite bored at times because there is a lot of explanations about like the politics of Oz and the geography of Oz, and I will admit my eyes kind of glaze over when I get to those sections. And I do think it took me maybe 30 or 40 pages to really get into it. There is a lot to kind of slog through at the start, but then when the plot actually starts happening, because it's a very bizarre first chapter, I must say, I'm like, you're putting a lot of people off for this, mate. But once it really gets into like, okay, these are the characters we'll be spending a lot of time with, I was quite into it. I enjoyed the dynamics and seeing what the relationship was like between Elphaba's parents and this other guy who kind of gets involved in things and maybe or maybe not fathered Elphaba's sister Nessa. It gets very messy very quickly, but I kind of enjoyed that. But yeah, I think the writing style and everything might turn some people off. It just feels like, this is Wizard of Oz for adults because they have sex, and we're going to be really crude and we're going to describe their bodies intimately. There's a lot of that I'm like, okay, buddy, like take a cold shower and then maybe rewrite that chapter, yeah. But it's still good. I am enjoying it, especially now we've gotten into like the swing of it. I'm like, okay, I can see where Wicked took its story now from these elements. Like, okay, like it feels a bit more like the stage show now. So we've definitely gotten into more of that, and we're getting to into Act 2 of the show now, if you will. So yeah, we've kind of just had like the defying gravity moment, basically, or at least this version of it. And I am enjoying it. I'm enjoying the characters. We're spending a lot of time with characters I wasn't really expecting. Like Bock had like a whole section of the book to himself, which was quite a surprise. The fates of some characters is a bit different than you might have expected if you've watched Wicked or seen Wicked in any of its other forms. So it's interesting to see what they changed up for the show and therefore for the movies as well. But yeah, there's a lot of interest in this as well. I don't know if it's going to keep holding my attention with all like the politics stuff and the descriptions of the world for the other half of the book. Because I feel like it really did take its time to actually get to like the character stuff, which I am enjoying. So we'll see what happens, but I am enjoying it so far. I think this is probably on track to be a solid like 3.5 stars right now. Maybe the second half will really, really blow me away, but it's solid. I know it's the start of like a series of like 4 books. I don't know if I'd really check those out, but we'll see. So we're off to an interesting start with this. I am enjoying it. I can see why this might not be for everyone. I feel like some people would just find this so incredibly dull. Which I think would be fair enough. Luckily, I'm not finding that. I'm finding it quite easy to read. I only started it a couple of days ago. I read like 150 pages in one sitting, so I'm definitely into it, and I feel like it flows very well. I feel like it's paced quite well thus far, even if what it's focusing on to move the time along is strange, because you advertise it as like the real story of Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, and I actually feel like she's kind of a side character for most of this so far, so that's kind of interesting, but we'll see if that continues on. But yeah, I'm enjoying this so far, and I look forward to seeing how I feel about it at the end. I will check back in when it's done. Okay, so a bit of significant progress to update you with now, in the couple of weeks, maybe a week and a half, since I last talked on here. Because I've got 2 books that I've finished to talk about. The first one, of course, being Wicked by Gregory Maguire, which I'd already checked in on, I think, a certain way through. And yeah, I really ended up quite liking this. I'd give it 3.5 stars. I think retroactively, having now read the second half of the book, which I think is significantly better than the first half, I can see the flaws, and yeah, the first half of the book I think is quite slow and meandering, but there's some decent kind of political messages in there, and I was enjoying the characters, I was enjoying the writing for the most part as well, but this really did feel like Gregory Maguire was like finally interested as soon as like he got to the Wizard of Oz portion of Elphaba's story. So yeah, a few kind of surprising moments in there. If you are used to like Wicked, the stage show or the films or whatever, the Tin Man has a different origin in this. The same but different in many ways. And yeah, I've already talked about how the characters from the musical are very different in this and meet different fates, or just aren't given as much of a role. Glinda's in this probably nowhere near as much as people who love the musical would be expecting when they read this. But yeah, the back half of the book definitely focuses a lot more just on Elphaba and her journey, which I think is a much more successful thing that the book does. It gives her a real mission, and she's kind of seeking redemption for events that kind of happen. Probably, about halfway through the book, a big thing kind of kicks off with Elphaba in her life that she probably shouldn't have got involved in. It was a bit naughty of her. Things escalate from there, and she kind of then spends some time in isolation trying to redeem herself and get forgiveness for things that she's done. And then that kind of bleeds into the reputation she has by the time Dorothy arrives and the events of the Wizard of Oz play out. So you see a different side to her in many ways. You can sort of understand where she's coming from. But I think Wicked, the musical, as an interpretation of the Wicked Witch of the West's character, that is much more of a departure than I think Elphaba is in this one. So I quite liked that. I enjoyed very much the journey of the second half of the book. To be honest, I wish the whole book was just the second half. I feel like you could have really trimmed down the first half, and the focus it gave to some characters who kind of do pop up again every now and again, but not enough to justify how much time I think we spent with them. That felt a bit unnecessary. But seeing how some things kind of came together and so that's what that is in the Wizard of Oz and all that, that was still satisfying, just like it is when you watch the musical. And yeah, I enjoyed the writing of it. I enjoyed the characterization of some of the supporting characters in the second half of the book were quite strong. Some surprisingly, I guess, current and up-to-date representation, positive representation for stuff as well, which I wasn't expecting. So yeah, that was good. Definitely gets a bit raunchy at times as well in the second half. So, if they're really young kids who are oh, there's a Wicked book, I want to read that. Dear God, do not let them read this. This is very much a book for adults. There's a lot of sex in this. A lot of descriptions, shall we say. So, dear God, do not let children read this. Even if they're Wicked fans, maybe there's like a novelisation of the musical out there, I'm not sure. But I know this is actually the first in a series. I think there's 4 books. And there's one that I think follows the Cowardly Lion. And then maybe 2. There's at least another one that follows a supporting character from the second half of this book, who I actually really liked and found myself quite endeared to. I don't want to say who that is, because it's a pretty massive spoiler for something that happens in this. But it's someone significantly tied to Elphaba in the second half of the book. I will say that much. So if you read it, you probably will then, you'll know who I'm probably talking about. But yeah, I very much enjoyed the struggles and the themes overall that they were trying to get across in this. I definitely think they went a bit too hard on like the world building early on, in ways that it just like it never really came back in a significant enough way that it just felt a bit unnecessary. And I think there were just too many characters and too many things thrown into the first half of the book in hindsight. I think the second half is a lot more peeled back. There's still a lot of characters, but you spend a lot more time with them. It's so much more so from just Elphaba's point of view in the second half, whereas we spend like a huge portion from Boq's point of view in the first half, which was just bizarre. Boq's nowhere near as significant in this as he is in the musical, and yet he has like an entire section of the book dedicated to him. Kind of the second half really also kicks off with things from Fiero's perspective, which I very much enjoyed. So yeah, just a lot of the decisions I feel like really worked in its favour in the second half, and I liked that a lot better. I was enjoying the first half, don't get me wrong, but I think this probably would have been a 3-star if I didn't enjoy the second half as much as I did. So it definitely came together for me. The final lines like really hit for me. I thought they were set up really well throughout the second half of the story. Trying to think if there's anything else I can say, because it's been about a week since I finished this now. But yeah, I thought it was pretty competently written. There's a few creepy like Stephen King writing children-esque moments that I thought was a bit strange, so that kind of took me out of it at times, so not big on that. And I heard some complaints that people were like, oh, he just gave up near the end of the book and like just rushed the ending, like just rushed the Wizard of Oz bits. I would disagree. I feel like they were pretty well paced. I think, if anything, the entire book should have just been as paced as the Wizard of Oz events were in this. So yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. If you are like a die-hard fan of the musical and you don't want to see any significant changes to that in any way, shape or form, I wouldn't recommend this. I don't think necessarily this complements Wicked the musical in the same way Wicked the musical complements the Wizard of Oz. I would say that, but you're not going to know unless you try it for yourself. So I personally quite liked the writing, and a lot of the side characters also really stood out, even if they were a bit like basic. I still enjoyed spending time with some of them, and there were a few twists and turns that really surprised me in this that I appreciated. So I'm not going to declare it like one of my absolute favourites of the challenge or anything. And maybe there is just a bit of bias towards it. Maybe the extra 0.5 is because I just really enjoy the Wicked world and lore as much as I do. But I do think this was a very well written book for the most part, particularly the second half, as I've mentioned about 100 times. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Your enjoyment may vary, but you can say that for any book, really, can't you? So that was Wicked, 3.5 stars. Well, it wasn't Wicked, it was fine, but it's a joke. So yeah, I enjoyed that. 3.5 stars, and yeah, give it a go if you're in the mood. I think it definitely helped knowing like the second Wicked film's out in like 10 days, 11 days as I'm recording this. So I read it at the perfect time as well. So it's up to you. See for yourself how you feel about it. But yeah, Die Hard fans and children, please dear God stay away from that. Anyway, that was W, and my choice for X was XOXO by XOXO. First things first, and sadly the best thing about this book, in my opinion, is the cover. Look at that artwork, it's gorgeous. It's by... it says cover art by Zipcy, Zipcy, so I'm guessing that's an artist of some kind. And then cover design by Jesse Gang. So I'm guessing that's just like the placement of the text and stuff, and then Zipsy did the actual illustration. Just beautiful colouring and everything. I just thought it looked lovely. So that was one of the things that really drew me to this book when I was looking up a choice for X. You probably won't be too surprised. Options were quite limited for books beginning with X. So, you know, I didn't have a huge pool to pick from, really. But this one really stood out because I thought the cover was just so nice. But yeah, this is the story of a girl called Jenny, who is aspiring to be like a superstar cello player, ultimately. So she wants to go to like a performing arts school, everything like that, blah, blah, blah. Strained relationship with her mother since her dad passed away when she was younger. She's a lot closer to her uncle, who runs a karaoke bar. So, yeah, while she's like, she works there part-time, while she's there, she bumps into this guy in one of the karaoke booths, and they end up kind of having like this whirlwind night out together, and there's clearly a spark between them, but then he like disappears and they go their separate ways, blah blah blah. Time passes, and for plot reasons, Jenny and her mum end up moving to Korea. They are in the US originally, because Jenny ends up going to this like super elite performing arts school for a couple of months, as like a transfer student, and Jenny's mother, who is kind of Jenny's grandmother even, who's estranged-ish from her mother, not really, but also kind of, she's sick, so they've kind of gone to look after her, and at the same time Jenny can go to this performing arts school and try and advance her career. And you'll never guess who's a student at that school. It's the guy that she had that connection with. And as it turns out, he is, I think he's the lead singer, but certainly a member of an up-and-coming K-pop band who's like gaining influence all the time. They're hugely popular and infamously have to be very secretive or just outright can't have relationships, certainly not publicly, because they need to focus on their careers. So naturally, those two are drawn together again, and things ensue from there. So yeah, it's a very speedy read. You know, any time I've dedicated to reading it in the past couple of days, I made significant progress. You know, it didn't take me long at all. It's a very quick read, even though it is like 320 something pages, I think. It did fly by. So yeah, an easy read in many ways. In other ways, not, because I did not get on with the writing in this. It just, I don't know. It sounds derogatory to say like it reads like fan fiction, because there's nothing wrong with fan fiction, and I think some fan fiction is excellent, but I feel like you know what I mean when I say that, and I'm trying. I don't want to be rude about that, but you know, it's just, some of the dialogue is just so cringy. It tells and doesn't show in the most bizarre way. Whenever like characters like performing songs or anything, or like being in a concert, like showing off their skills or whatever, it's always just like told to us after it's happened, and we're never like in the moment of the moments that I feel like should be important, but they just aren't. They're just glossed over. The characters are paper thin. You know, I feel like the two leads fell in love way too quickly for my liking. The side characters, for the most part, apart from maybe like Jenny's roommate, are pretty bland. the other band members kind of all bled together mostly as well. There's some side characters that just like appear and disappear in the plot for no apparent reason. Like before she like reunites with I think his name was Jae-woo, the like K-pop guy, Jenny like has a connection with a guy called Ian when she first moves over, and it's like, ooh, he's a bit flirty. He does not come back into this for like 200 pages, and for a time I thought he wasn't going to, and he's only in it again for like 10 pages, and it's like, what was the point of even setting that up and bringing it back? Like, it just felt so unnecessary, and that was another key thing that I just didn't like about the writing. Everything just felt so inconsequential, and you'd sit there like describing some element of like clothing or the food she was eating. It would go on for ages, but then you don't describe like literal important events in the book. You just gloss over them. So it's like the priorities were like a bit all over the place, and it felt a bit made up as it went along. So there's just some excuses like, oh, I didn't know you had your phone on you to receive that text, because she's supposed to be in like a dress or something. And then she was like, oh yeah, haha, I thought it'd be funny if I just carried my phone with me when I realised there was a pocket in it. And that was never set up in any way. It was just there to like move the plot along. And I was like, could you not have gone back and written her discovering a pocket at least, instead of just this coming out of nowhere? And it would be like, oh, this, I get stuck in this queue and it's really long and I'm probably going to be late for the thing that I need to attend. Oh no, actually it was fine in the end. And that's it. I'm like, why even include that then? So I feel like it was trying to be like a bit cozy and light-hearted, and it certainly does have that vibe. Very low stakes for the most part, because any conflict is just resolved so quickly. But that just makes it feel inconsequential rather than cozy, in my opinion. It just like nothing really stuck. I didn't buy any of the conflicts in this, because Jenny and her roommate at the first like really don't get on. And then they just suddenly, in the space of one chapter, they suddenly do. And then it's like, oh, you're the best friend I ever had. Like, I didn't believe any of these relationships. And so much is just like told to us. Like, we're told how we should feel. And like, Jenny like meets someone and like, oh my god, this person's so cute. We're going to be really good friends. And like, the book has done nothing to show us that this person's cute and likable in any way. And we're supposed to just go along with it. So it's very weird. I don't know why. For some reason, I feel like this could have been better if it was from someone else's point of view other than Jenny's. I don't know. Maybe if it was from like Jae-woo's perspective, like the K-pop like star. I just feel like being inside his head would have been a bit more interesting, because this is like cliche the book, and obviously this just isn't like my kind of thing. There will absolutely be an audience for this who will eat this up and love it, and clearly people did, because there's a second one. I won't be reading it, but I will say I'm glad there is a second one, because the second one's about the roommate, and like there's like a previous romance she had in the universe of this book, and it's very background, and I was expecting it to come back up and be like, okay, when are we going to get like this wrapped up and tied up in a nice neat bow like everything else has been? And it just never was. I was like, that's bizarre. So it felt a bit underwhelming that some things are set up and just not paid off. But now that I know there's a second book that clearly ties up that loose end, cool. But it doesn't mean that this isn't like an underwhelming and feels a bit underbaked as an ending. Because like the main conflict is resolved and then the book ends like 2 pages later. And I'm like, oh, like we've just gotten to the interesting point of these two's relationships and the book's over. So I'm guessing there'll also be like supporting characters in the second book, and maybe we get more of that then. I don't know. But yeah, this wasn't for me. I would probably give it a 2-star normally, but because I do think it's more of a me problem for the most part than the book's problem, even though I do think the writing is pretty subpar. I am going to boost it to 2.5, because I can't give this less than Galapagos. I'm sorry. That just would be balmy. But yeah, this definitely is pretty down the list of things, sadly, that I just haven't really enjoyed as much. But the cover's really nice. I love the cover. You know, I judged a book by its cover, and it worked against the book in this case, sadly. But yeah, it was just far too oddly written, and the conflicts were just handled badly. I thought the relationship developments were either rushed or just outright dropped and never brought back up again. It really did kind of read like it was just made up as it went along. And that's fine if it all comes together, but I don't think it did, personally. And I was just bored. I just thought it was a bit too long. And as soon as something gets mentioned, I'm like, okay, well, I know where that's going. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think it wants to be cozy. And I respect it for trying to do that. For me, it wasn't successful in being cozy, but for others, it absolutely would be. But yeah, not for me. But that's fine. You know, not everything's gonna hit, and it's definitely it's not you, it's me kind of issue. I think with this book, I could recommend. I know people in my life I could recommend this to, and they would fucking love this. So you know, I'm not saying the book is outright bad. But yeah, not one I'm going to be holding on to. Let's just say that. Oh, I probably should also mention XOXO. That's the name of the band that the guy's in. That's why it's called that. It's not just like a very random thing. But there you are. So XOXO. I finished it about 20 minutes ago. Well, that's not a lie. I've been recording for 23 minutes. I finished this about 35 minutes ago. I've already forgotten so much of this. That's that. So, we have 2 books left of the entire challenge, which is crazy. And my choice for why is You Have Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akweke Emezi. First things first, I do have a bone to pick with this cover, because I think it's rubbish compared to the other editions of this book you can get in like the US and stuff. The US cover is lovely. I think this is quite bad, personally. So that was a shame that the UK cover's not the best, but you know, I guess it makes it fit in a bit more with the other like books you might buy to take on holiday with you. It's kind of giving that, but again, I'm judging a book by its cover there, and I shouldn't. But yeah, and I'm not really judging it because I've heard very good things about this. The YouTuber I follow loved this, so I'm very intrigued to see how I feel about it. Yeah, it's about, I think it's a woman called Faye, or Faye, maybe, who is a widow, a young widow, and she's just getting back into like the dating scene. She meets this guy and starts a relationship with him, and then she is introduced to his dad, and she's like, oh no, he's hot. So I think it's going to get pretty fucking messy. So we'll see what happens with it. Again, I don't know if this is going to be necessarily for me, but my original choice for why was a book called You Are Fate of the Invited, and it was a murder mystery. And I just got to the point where I thought, I can't read another murder mystery in this challenge. I've already done so many. I can't do it again. Some of them were like surprisingly murder mysteries that I didn't anticipate. And then we had others that I knew were murder mysteries, like Voyage of the Damned, One of Us is Lying. So I just like, I can't read another murder mystery for this challenge. Let's put something else in, mix it up a bit. And then I ended up choosing this one. Great title. I think that's a brilliant title. So hopefully the book is just as good itself. We'll have to wait and see. So yeah, I haven't started it yet because I've only just finished XOXO. But I will check back in when I've made some progress with it. Maybe when I've even finished. It looks quite short. We'll see. But yeah, 2 books left and then this challenge is done. I'm feeling quite confident I can get this done by the end of the year. When I'm recording this, it's the 10th of November. So I've got 6-7 weeks left of the year to read another 2 books. I think we can do it. We'll see if I have enough spare time as things get pretty crazy for Christmas approaching. But yeah, I will let you know my thoughts when I have some. Okay, I can't remember when I last checked in. It's been a little while, probably a month or so at least. We can finish this challenge today in, the important news that I have to share. Even though I can't even remember if I started talking about my choice for why I think I might have been a bit of a way through or about to start it. I can't remember. Any promises I made about checking in with that book, I broke them, because not only have I finished reading that one, I've also read My Choice for Z and finished the challenge. So, why did I say Z? I normally say Z. That was strange. Anyway, the challenge is done. I finished it on the 5th of December. It's currently the 9th of December. It's also 10 to 11 at night, but work has been absolutely crazy with Christmas. I have literally not had time to record this until now, because it's just I'm in 6 days a week, and then on the 7th day I just sleep. So I just haven't had the opportunity or the energy to record this until now. So while I've just downed like an energy drink, I thought, right, let's just get this done and recorded. I mean, my iPad's currently broken, so I don't know if I'm even going to be able to edit this anytime soon, but I need to get this done. So anyway, challenge finished on 5th of December. Can't even remember when I started it. I think it was either the end of January or end of February, one of those two. But I wanted it to be finished this year, and I did finish it this year, so I'm very, very excited about that. So yeah, I can talk about the last 2 books in this challenge, and then just talk about the challenge as a whole. If you want to know my absolute, deep dive thoughts on everything, then obviously watch the previous videos in this series. But, okay, so Why You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwake Emezi. I'm pretty sure I at least talked about the book as a whole before I even started it, but I might have been a bit of the way through when I last checked in. I can't remember, and I'm not going to go and check until I edit this video, so it doesn't even matter. But yes, this I ended up giving 2.5 stars. I saw promise at first, and I did enjoy the writing for the most part. But yeah, this had one major flaw that I just could not get past. And I think because I liked the prose so much, that pushed it to 2.5. In my heart of hearts, I'd probably just give this a 2-star, but I did enjoy the prose. The dialogue, less so. But I did enjoy the writing of, just the other stuff. The text, the prose, whatever. But yeah, everything else about this, I finished it in 2 days just because I wanted it done. And yeah, the trouble with this is the core relationship in this, in my opinion, had no chemistry, was completely forced. The only thing they had in common was that they both had dead spouses, and I was just like, you're so incompatible in every other way. And the book is like bending over backwards trying to sell this relationship as like the best thing since sliced bread, to the point where other side characters, it completely makes them act out of character and make them look like the bad guys just so that we kind of want to root for this main relationship more. So yeah, there's a significant age gap in like the main relationship that's established in this book, which doesn't bother me. But what did bother me is that they just had no chemistry, and when they were kind of, when they were together, I was like, I just don't believe this at all. I don't believe that these two have such deep bond. I don't believe that this guy is willing to wreck his entire family and his relationship with his kids for this woman that he's known for 3 weeks. Yeah, it's, I don't know. Some people are going to agree with that. Some people are going to disagree with that. That's the way it works. But for me, the main selling point of this book is this romance, and it just did not work for me. So it was never going to do very well score-wise, was it? But I did enjoy the writing for the most part. The dialogue, no, quite cringy at times, quite like, and very like every cliche thing you could possibly say is said in this, I think. But then the prose is like written so elegantly and crafted so well. I'm like, I feel like it's a much better book in here. And then the dialogue just falls back on anything you would have read before, even though I think it's trying to be a bit different. I mean, I think the cover alone, the UK version of this book, which is significantly worse than any other cover I've seen of this book, I think it's trying to like sell this as like a book you'd buy to read on holiday. That's the vibe it's getting. which is a shame because I do think it at least deserves maybe a better cover than this, because the title absolutely slaps. It's a shame that, that's the best thing about the book is the title. So yeah, that kind of sucks, especially because the person on YouTube that I follow for book reviews and stuff loved this and gave it 4.5 stars. But different strokes for different folks. We all have different tastes. I'm not normally like a big romance reader, and this is certainly not something that I particularly enjoyed. So yeah, that is the big thing for me, is that the romance just did not work. The dialogue was nowhere near as good as the rest of the prose was. I think the main character was pretty boring in my opinion. I think a lot of the characters were kind of just bland in there, and the likeable characters were then just completely ruined and made to act out of character to try and justify this like true love bond or whatever that we're supposed to be seeing, that I just didn't see with the main couple. I don't know. I liked the setting. I liked some of the background themes that were explored, but yeah, I don't know. It was just very meh. And then there's like 2 like really deeply described sex scenes, and then it's like, okay, and back to normal again. I'm just like, okay, strange. So there's good elements, there's bad elements. It's just a very mixed bag, which I think is worthy of a 2.5. But the fundamental plot of the book and the fundamental relationship in this book, for me, absolutely did not work. So yeah, I read it to be done with it, sadly. I would definitely read another book by Akwake Emezi, because I do think their writing, at least, their prose is good. But it would have to be probably not a romance. And I do think they have written, other genres. So I'd kind of maybe check some of those out. I'm not going to be in a rush to, though, because this was, not for me, sadly. But what can you do? Them's the breaks. Maybe I should have just gone with my original choice for why and done another murder mystery. But you know what? I wanted to change things up. I did. Didn't work out, but that's okay. So that's why. Why did I read it, in summary? And then we come on to my choice for Z, the final book. And it is Zami, A New Spelling of My Name by Audre Lorde. This, again, I didn't have many options. I felt like I was looking up books beginning with Z to try for this. This one came up. I'd never heard of it before. I thought, you know what, it sounds kind of interesting. What really drew me to it was that she calls it like a biomythography. She kind of like, mixes a new genre. It basically is an autobiography, but I think there are like fictitious elements sewn in, and like stories of other women kind of sewn into either her own story or just outright. Sometimes there'll be little sections that are in like italics that are outside of like the autobiographical stuff, basically. So it's an interesting blend, and Audre Lorde also wrote a lot of poetry. So, there is a kind of a playing of the style, I guess, in regards to that you can really see if she has like a poetry background. So yeah, it's basically, a good portion of her life story, and about her kind of finding her identity. What does it say? She describes herself as a black lesbian mother warrior poet, and this is like the journey of her kind of discovering those things about herself and going on that journey. So I thought that was really cool. Sadly, Audre Lorde, I looked it up after this. She passed away quite young. She's no longer with us, which sucks because she seemed pretty cool. She died in 1992. She died of cancer, aged 58. And I was absolutely gutted when I found that out. I think I must have been about halfway through at that point, and I hadn't read that opening page, and I just like looked up, I wonder what, is she still around? And I was like, to see that she died before I was even born was very, very sad. But yeah, this, thank God we ended on a high. I feel like this last batch of books has been very, very mixed reviews. A bit up and down, but we ended on a real high. We started and ended on a high with this video for sure, because I would give this 4 stars. I think sometimes it got a bit repetitive in regards to what she was describing happening. But there were some fascinating stories in here and fascinating anecdotes. And it was just nice kind of reading like the life story of someone I'd never heard of before I read this and like did this challenge. And I never would have read this or discovered this if I hadn't done this challenge. And that's why I'm so glad I did do this. And yeah, I loved Audrey's writing. I think she was an excellent writer. You know, I feel like she knew it. Some chapters were quite long, some chapters were quite short. She kind of knew when a certain topic or a certain like event in her life didn't need more explaining or outstayed its welcome. It was very kind of carefully considered in that respect and very well crafted, which I appreciated. Because even though it was about 300 or so pages, 304-ish pages, I was never really bored. There were segments I was like, okay, I don't think we needed this much description of like... I do think, if anything, she describes what people are wearing in too much detail in regards to other things that I feel like she glosses over. But other than that, I feel like she really does choose the right people to describe and the right events to describe in a certain amount of, like, the correct amount of length, basically. But yeah, it was really interesting to learn more about her and her early life, her very fractured relationship with her mother that I feel like never quite healed, and just learning about her sisters. And this is basically the story. It's an autobiography with the framing device of a focus on the women in her life, the women who changed her, who shaped her into the person that she is. That's what Zami means. Zami is... does it say in here, like, the exact definition? I don't want to get it completely wrong. I can't remember the exact definition now, but it was like a woman who loves and supports other women, a woman who lifts other women up, mainly like a woman who loves other women. It's called Zami, and like we get like the title name drop near the end of the book, and I was like, ooh, chills. So yeah, this is like a celebration of the women in Audre Lorde's life, and yeah, the women she loved and lost, essentially, be it romantically or platonically, and you know, the fact that she was kind of growing up as a black lesbian woman in like the 1950s, 60s, 70s, when, you know, racism, homophobia, everything, sexism was being thrown at her, and it's a real story of resilience and her overcoming that. And she doesn't shy away from those topics, but I wouldn't say that's all that this book is about. I feel like it's a really interesting balance, and it never comes across as like oh, poor me, look what I went through. She's just so brutally honest about things, and like, this is how it was. One story, it was quite early on, that really stuck with me, and I don't think I'm going to forget it in a long time, because just the image of it is just so awful, and the idea that this had to happen to someone and they were used to this thing is so awful. But she was talking about when she'd be out with her mum, so they'd just be walking around town or something, and like people would spit at her, like spit on, you know, Audrey and her sisters, just because they were black. People would just spit on them, and Audrey's mother kept little pieces of newspaper in her bag that she would get out so she could like clean them. So like she pre-prepared bits of scraps of paper to keep around her and in her bag at all times, because she knew people would spit on her children for being black. Like, oh, that's making me kind of angry and tearing up. But the thought of that you have to prepare for that, because you just, you know, that's going to happen, and you get used to, well, maybe not used to, but you know people are going to just spit on your children because they're black. Fucking horrible. And as soon as I read that, like, my heart kind of broke, and it was all I could think about for the rest of the book. And it's all I can still sometimes just think about, being like, what an awful, like, little anecdote that really, really stuck with me. And there's a few moments like that in this, I'm like, holy shit. Like, crazy that people can be so fucking horrible. And yeah, Audrey went through a lot of shit in her life, essentially. And I'm just so gutted that it was cut short, because she seems like an amazing woman. I'd love to learn more about her. I'd love to read some of her poems and stuff. And there are a few poems like littered in here as well, which was really interesting to kind of get an insight into like her poetry style, because that's another way of getting to know her other than just writing like an autobiography like this. So that was really cool. But yeah, just learning about the big events in Audrey's life. You know, how when she was really young, her name was originally spelt with a Y on the end of Audrey. And when she was really young, she kind of just dropped that because she didn't like it. And she just thought Audrey Lorde, like that, written like that, just sounds better and looks better. There's a story about her kind of learning to write at school when her teacher kind of, you know, not liking that she kept leaving the Y off, that was her kind of discovering herself even from such a young age. And I really liked that kind of origin story of her name even. So some really fascinating stuff in here, some really great insights into the attitudes of the time and the geography of the time and the people of the time. Because like Audrey was living all over the place. You know, she lives in New York at some point. She goes to, I think, Mexico, I think she goes to at some point. She might have gone to Spain. But, you know, she has little adventures all over the place. And it gets to a point where I'm like, wow, she's like 18 years old and she's been to she's lived in all these different places and done all these different things and met all these different people. Like, what a really crazy, fulfilled life and a wild, eventful life she led. Even though, yeah, she only lived to be 58. So yeah, I'm so glad I read this, and I'm so glad I discovered Audrey Lorde, and I would love to kind of do a deep dive into more of her work and her life. I think there's a few documentaries on her that I'd love to watch if I can get access to them at some point. But yeah, a remarkable story of a remarkable lady, and all the awful stuff she had to endure from such a young age, you know, and she overcome so many obstacles and still found, you know, with everything being against her, she still found enough beauty and enough inspiration in the world to like write poems and you know, write books and stuff. So cool. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. So definitely a very solid 4 stars. And after a very kind of like meh 3 or 4 books in a row, I was like, thank God we ended on a high. So yeah, it was great to end the challenge on a really strong book. I think it probably cracks my top 10 out of the challenge, I would say. I'll probably crunch the numbers in a minute and try and like work out like an order for you. I'll probably have an order of like my favourite to least favourite from all 26 books at some point in this video. I'll try and maybe, if I remember, I'll post it somewhere around here at some point during the video. So look out for that if you want my like definitive ranking of all 26 books from best to worst. But yeah, this was great. Loved this. And I'm just glad we ended the challenge on a very good note. And with that, 26 books done. I can't believe we actually have come to the end of this now. So if I look at my stats that I have already pre-prepared for this, my average rating of the books in this video was 3.25, which is by far the lowest of any kind of set of the books we've done in the previous videos. And sadly, that did bring my overall rating for all the books down. Up until now, it had been 3.7 out of 5 stars from part 2 and 3. But with this, it has brought down my overall rating of my challenge to an average of 3.6 stars out of 5, which is still, you know, very good. So I definitely really enjoyed most of the books. But there were a few kind of maybe slight clunkers in this last set of 6 books that brought down the overall average a bit, sadly. But what are you going to do? It is what it is. So, yeah, very, very, very easy to pick out the highlights of these last set of books. And it was clearly Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee and Zami, A New Spelling of My Name by Audrey Lorde. Yeah, clear favourites in this part of the challenge, and definitely some favourites overall. So, yeah, crazy to think that we're done. Very excited that we're done. Because, you know, this is been a long time coming. I've been working on this challenge for at least 10 months, maybe 11. I can't remember exactly when I started, but yeah, we've had some highs, we've had some very low lows. Luckily, our very low lows, I think, came nearer the beginning of the challenge than the end. Although, that being said, I have had two 2.5s in this video, so maybe not. But overall, I think I've done very, very well in this challenge, and most of the books I've read, I've really liked. So I'm going to crunch some numbers now and see what my ranking is and see how many different ratings I gave to all the different books. Okay, so I'll post my ranking like somewhere around here of the 26 books from my favourite to my least favourite. I'm looking at the list myself here. So yeah, we had 4 2.5 stars, so 4 books that I found were like average. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 3-star books, which are okay, good. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 3.5-star books, which I just really liked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4-star books, which were great. 5 4.5-star books, which were excellent, and then 1 5-star book, which was, a new all-time favourite book of mine, which of course was Martyr. So very easy kind of choice for my number 1 there. But yeah, my top 10, very, very happy with that. Sorry about it, Butter. They've just missed out on the top 10 there, but what can you do? So yeah, in hindsight, I feel like some of these ratings I would now change. Now I've had a lot of time and distance from some of these books. Like, I feel like I'd probably put Butter down to 3.5. And I'd probably put Galapagos down to 2. But, I'm sticking with my initial ratings here, and I'll just see what happens with time. Maybe changing my mind if I reread some of these books. I am going to unhaul a lot of these now because I just need the space on my shelves, but I've been waiting to finish this challenge before I did that in case I needed any to reference. But I'll do another haul and unhaul video very soon where I unhaul a lot of these, because I've gotten a lot of new books as well that I need to talk to you guys about. And I'll also be doing a top 10 favourite books that I've read this year video. I'll be doing just a video overall where I talk about every book I've read this year, because there's obviously some books I read that weren't in this challenge that I'd like to talk about as well. And I'll be doing a top 10 movies a top 10 movies that I've seen this year video as well. I won't be doing one for TV shows because I just don't watch TV anymore. I've probably watched 3 TV shows this year. But yeah, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully I will find the time to do them before the end of the year. If not, I'll be doing them early next year, kind of a wrap up of here's my favourite books and movies of the year. But for this challenge at least, we are done, and hopefully I can get this video out before the end of the year. I might just have to edit it on my laptop and work out how on earth I do that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed doing this challenge. I'm very pleased that I did get it done before the year was out. And yeah, I found some really, really good books this year. That's 11 books that were 4 stars or higher. Nearly half the books I read, I really, really enjoyed. So that's a big, big success for me. And there's only 4 that I'm kind of yeah, kind of slightly sad I spent so much time reading those. But what can you do? But yeah, overall, big success. I hope you've enjoyed following along with this challenge. Let me know your thoughts on any of the books in this video, if you've read them, or just, challenges in general. So yeah, I guess that's everything. Thank you so much for patiently waiting for updates on this challenge as the years kind of progressed, but I've really enjoyed doing it. Won't be doing it again next year because I want to read, a bit more of I guess what I want rather than what this challenge dictated for me. But I did really like doing this and discovering, all-time new favourite authors, really, Ted Chiang. I'm reading his his first collection of short stories at the moment, because Exhalation, again, is one of my favourite things I read in this challenge and just this year in general. I can't wait to finish the Scythe trilogy and read some more of those. I've got the next book in the Ninth House series to read. I really want to read more Terry Pratchett after Hogfather. So yeah, I've discovered some really, really great new authors and new stories this year that I wouldn't have done without this challenge. So very glad to have done it. Definitely would recommend giving it a go yourself if you want to do something similar. Definitely go for it. Yeah, it was definitely a worthwhile use of my time this year. So definitely one of the best things that I did in 2025, and I'm very proud to have finished it in time. So there we have it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in whatever the hell comes next.